We're live.
And my guest today, Nancy Parsons. I am so excited to talk to you because I watched you on another Zoom with another really sweet interviewer, and I learned so much about your lack of fear. So before we get to that, Nancy, let's talk a little bit about the group that you're in charge of, CDR Assessment Group. Tell us about this.
Yeah. CDR Assessment Group was founded in 1998 by my business partner and myself. And we have unique and very deep assessment tools to help leaders and professionals become the best they can be through a whole new level of self-awareness. So we work with organizations and then executive coaches too, who we develop to use our tools with their clients. So we're global. We've been at it now for almost 22 years, and we're doing a lot. And actually, we're doing some other exciting things now too in the AI learning space. So,
all right, now, Nancy, you've written a book, and we're going to get to that book. But I want to hone in on, how did you start? What is your past that enabled you to start this organization where you can kind of delve into people's soul and bring out their true talents?
Yeah,
those are like godlike powers.
Well, we do have people say, I feel like you unzipped me and looked into my soul.
I love it.
So there you go. It really does go deep. But I was in HR and organizational development, actually in the energy industry for years. So I was on that side of it. And in the early 90s, moved away from more the HR firefighting to developing leaders. And started my first consulting business in the 90s. And started teaching coaching skills for leaders, became certified in those things, and then became an executive coach in the 90s. And I actually had, in the late 80s, developed 360s, performance feedback. So I was always interested in measurement and how do you measure behaviors. So that I just kind of moved into that realm. And then in the 90s, I was personally mentored by Bob Hogan on assessment measures, psychometric measures. And from there, I just loved it. It was my first love. And in terms of the work, being able to really help people. So then my business partner, she's an IO psychologist. And we formed together to, develop these assessments, because our quest back then, and it still is to revolutionize leadership. Because the way we do leadership today is really wrong. Studies show anywhere from 50 to 75% of leaders are ineffective. And I know that sounds staggering, but it was like that in 1998. So we went into this. Unfortunately, here we are 2 decades later, and the needle hasn't moved. Leaders still largely, what happens is there's a couple of reasons. Often they're not in the right jobs for themselves. They may be in a strategic role, yet they're more operational, or they lack, certain, they're maybe just not fit right. But the other big issue is we measure a thing called leadership risk factors. So these are ineffective coping strategies and how people react under stress, conflict, when they're tired. And unfortunately, these behaviors, and they're bad behaviors, ineffective behaviors, kind of run amok in organizations.
All right, now,
so because people don't know what they are, they're happening all the time. It's not something you think about. And so anyway, that's what we try to help people is recognize. What are your risks? First, what are your strengths and your gifts, certainly, to a very nuanced level. Then what are your risks that are undermining or sabotaging your success and your relationships with others? And then lastly, we look at what motivates. What are your intrinsic motivators? What makes you happy, excited, passionate versus those things that might deplete you and wear you out?
I want to cover those 3 things. There's so much to talk to you about, but I'm just thinking I would really like to apply this to my marriage and my skills, right?
Right.
I bet you could. Let's talk about you first. You're discovering, someone comes to you, and do you work with individuals or organizations or both?
Mostly organizations, but we occasionally work with individuals too. Yes.
Right.
And a lot of our coaches do, but we target, if you will, organizations.
You're looking at, I guess you want to give the good news first, your talents, your strengths, right?
Yes.
How do you determine that? What are you using as a kind of a guideline?
Yeah. So we have an assessment test, if you will, questionnaire that you take on the character assessment. It's about 220 questions, give or take. And based on that and how it stacks up to our normative database and the algorithms, then we print out, this profile of you that is very deep. It's not like a DISC or Myers-Briggs. It really goes deep into individual differences about each leader or individual. So it's, you have to take it online, and then based on the normative results, we score, and then we print out these beautiful reports that a coach or someone reviews with you. Now, these can also be used, they're validated for selection screening. So actually, the measures we use originally were developed for that. So we can determine what job you fit best. So are you a leader? And if so, what type of leader? Are you more of would you be better in the medical field in this job? That are you a police officer or not? Those kinds of things. So
Wow.
we know what job fit is and unfit for different jobs.
Risk factors or your ability to handle risk, I guess, is another area that you target. That's a
Right.
big deal because that means we really have to be self-aware.
Exactly. And these are also personality based, meaning they're inherent or innate behaviors, responses to certain stimuli or triggers. So it's the way we react or cope under stress or when there's conflict or somebody's pushing our buttons. And what happens is our normal strengths do not come out at that time. We resort to these other behaviors. We measure 11 of them. And they're things like egotist, upstager, pleaser, perfectionist, hyper moody, rule breaker,
God, these
cynic.
sounds like women. This is like all women, all in one person. All of these.
Well, we've done those studies too, and not necessarily. We can separate out which risks are more prevalent with which gender in leadership.
Exactly.
In leadership,
Exactly.
yeah.
So then you go on to, and I in watching one of your interviews, you said you are high risk. You could quit your job and be fine flipping burgers the next day.
That's
And a
right.
lot of people are seeking security.
Yes. Yes. And that comes into the drivers. We actually measure one's need for safety and security on a scale of 0 to 100. So if you have a high score, you don't like risk at all, and you want to know your job is good for life, you've got tenure, all these things. If you have a low score, and I have like a score under 5,
Wow.
it's like bring it on. And entrepreneurs have low scores typically, because
Mhm.
otherwise you could not go in day to day with a lot of those uncertainties in front of us, right? So it
I
just helps in that job. Yeah.
I would think that a real leader would have a lower score, but I don't know. I mean, this is just what I'm thinking. And wouldn't that be a super strength that you have, that you're not kind of paranoid and worried? You'll just take it as it comes, and if it doesn't work, you'll move on to the next.
Correct. But if I'm the accounting manager or I'm the treasurer, you might want me to have a little more safety and security. You might not want me to be high risk and make that bad deal, because I think, wow, look at that. So different jobs. There's different needs in those jobs for
Yeah,
professionals.
that's
The-
amazing.
yeah.
So when you're working, how long does it take for you to work with an organization I don't know if you're going employee to employee or if you're just speaking with the CEO. How long does this process take to strengthen an organization?
Yeah, so we like to start, if we can, at the top with like the C-suite or the senior leaders. And all that takes to begin is for everyone to take the assessments, which takes about 45 minutes online. Then they have an individual executive coaching feedback session. That takes about 3 hours roughly. From there, then we can go in and do team development. We can do analysis because we have their data, right? So we bring them in and then develop them in accordance with their own profiles and their own data. And then we cascade that down. We can do, we do authentic leadership workshops. We can bring in people, 24 or 30 people from across the organization, but we use their data to custom design all the activities. So they're actually going through it as themselves and how they would respond to these different situations. So it's awesome. It's really incredible.
I would imagine that you're just like blowing people's minds when they get this information and they
Yeah.
didn't even see what was happening, and you just kind of
Right.
shine a mirror and say, "This is you."
Exactly. They're pretty shocked at how we go so deep with these crazy little questions. The questions I think are for fifth or sixth grade reading level. They're not anything highly sophisticated, but to come out with all the data and the reports, people are pretty blown away,
Yeah, I would
but in
imagine.
a pleasant way. I mean, It's so funny because you'll get people say, I don't have that kind of time. I can't give you 2 to 3 hours. I can't give you 3 hours or 2.5 hours. But as soon as they get into the coaching session, they're in. They do not want to stop. They love it.
Oh, I wish you'd come on over here. Oh man, it would be so cool. Now tell us, and I know that you also help former military. They're always, I've got a son who is a Green Beret, having a really hard time using those intense skills in regular life. And I know you help them out as well.
Yeah, we have we started what we call vets coaching vets, but we've worked with about 6 of the local veterans organization nonprofits, and we're still working with Impact a Hero today. And what we do is we have them take the assessments and have coaching the veterans assimilate, because we can help them fine tune what is the best career path for you, where your strengths really lie. And so forth. So we've done that. We've even certified some veterans to coach other veterans too. And yeah, no, it's critical. One thing we found too with veterans, just so you know, is that 55% of those that we've worked with, and we coached about 70 or so far, and our wonderful executive coaches volunteered their time to do this too. So we didn't charge veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And but what we found was that 55% of them have what we call low career focus under their leadership energy. There's a number of different what we call subscales. But what that means is they're very ambivalent about their career. They lack focus. They don't know what they want to be when they grow up. But that stays with them throughout the rest of their lives. So they go into the military because they don't really know what they want to do with their lives. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they come out and they still don't know. But with the assessments, we can help them really hone in on what are your strengths to a very detailed level, as well as what do you love to do. We help them blend those two things to find the right career path.
Nancy,
and then we know what jobs look like, right? Because we measure jobs. We measure, what's the right fit, not the right fit for so many jobs. I mean, all their competencies out there, so we can help people get it right.
Gosh, you could be like an angel, because so many come back they just have they're hopeless. They don't know what to do, and they had such an incredible training and a kind of this brother and sisterhood there, right. And they come back lost, and it's just it's just a crime.
Yeah, and what we do, so we help them with that keen self-awareness, and then there's other programs that can really help them too. But we help them because if you're not self-aware at that level, that's when they make bad job choices, or they go in, they think they're fit, and then they're miserable, they're unhappy, they're not being, they're not excited, they just don't like it, they hate going to work every day. Right. So we help them really focus on what is best for you. And then there's other groups who help them with marketing themselves, like interviewing skills.
Yeah.
Although we can help them with that because we already know when we look at their results, you get really anxious. You really struggle on interviews, don't you? So a coach can help them with that because we can see it in their data.
Do you love your job? I mean, you were in a different industry, and you came out, you've got to just love going to work every day.
Oh, I do. No, I love what we do. It's, I mean, I've been blessed. That's all I can say. I helping people the way we do, helping them. I was just telling someone, that stuck with me many years ago. I had a young gal, and this is when our office was in Tulsa, and her parents were pushing her and her grandparents to go in a certain major in college. And she was very distressed. And we don't do the college coaching a lot, but we helped this particular young lady. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, when we saw and we went over what she looked really good at, it affirmed what she thought, not what the parents and grandparents thought. She just cried. I mean, she just hugged me and said, thank you, thank you. And, that sounds, but it just struck me that, wow. One other one that just is probably my best story ever is we did a redeployment study for Williams Energy many years ago. Mm-hmm. And in that, they were laying off on one side of the business, but they had openings for other key jobs like systems analyst. So we used the assessment measures to screen in candidates for that job. And then they would be sent to boot camp training if they had the right profiles.
Right.
And turned out I wrote an article a year later. I was asked to write an article. And it was the best class that they had ever had at that Texas Instrument facility of new IT people. And the professor said, it was better than the people who had college degrees in computer science. That's how good. And one lady went back and interviewed a couple of the candidates. She had been a secretary in Salt Lake City, a single parent. She would have never left that job, because of socioeconomic reasons, she was a secretary, but she was hardwired to be an analyst. So she said it was the best thing that ever happened to her. She then moved to Tulsa and had this great job. And I just checked in with her about a year and a half ago or so. Now she's like an executive for a Boston IT firm. So had we not done the assessments, had she not gone through the measures and the boot camp training to train her to do that, she probably would be in, in an administrative role somewhere. So we can find hidden talent is what I'm saying. And so that's pretty exciting too.
That's
if you can,
really exciting. And you say that you write, and you did write a book. The book is Women Are Creating the Glass Ceiling and Have the Power to End It.
Yes.
Tell us about this. Interesting title.
Yeah, because what we found in our research, and this is research based, was that we were comparing our data to performance data. So we didn't set out to look at gender or the glass ceiling. But what we found was, of course, men and women, by way of their personality strengths, what we call character, are equally well suited to serve as leaders. So both, have very strong profiles as leaders, right? So why aren't women making it? That begs the question, then why aren't women making it to the top levels? But then when we looked at the risk assessment data, those 11 risk factors, that there were marked differences between men and women in their risks. The women's highest risk tended to be worrier, which is a moving away type risk. So under stress, adversity, women go inside their heads, they overanalyze, they don't speak up. It's a fear of failure. So they're kind of fading and going inside. Meanwhile, the men were egotists, upstagers, and rule breakers. So they're like pushing, shouting, I got it, even though they don't have it. But that seems courageous and leader-like, and it's very visible. So they get promoted and the women get held back. So so bottom line is women are pulling themselves out of the running by this, what we call risks ineffective coping strategy of moving away under pressure and conflict. And just think about how often is there pressure, stress in an organization? Like
all the time.
All the time. Right. So these women are really strong leaders, but under stress, they kind of pull away. The good news is that the best part about the book for me and the research is, but we can help women overcome that worrying behavior. They'll still have that tendency, but we can help them learn tactics and ways to neutralize it so they don't go into worry mode as soon as they're in a hot or contentious meeting, that they can stand their ground and go. So
Nancy,
yeah.
And I just want to say, because I will definitely get this book, because like many women, I'm a worrier. I don't want to offend. I'm a people pleaser. All these
right.
are sweet, but maybe not very strong in business. What would be the one bit of advice, your most important piece of advice you'd give to a worrier?
Right. Well, the most important is to practice a different tactic. You acknowledge, number one, own it. You do this, you do it routinely. It's part of your pattern. So you have to practice something different. Figure out what that is, whether it's, I know when Joe talks to me, I freeze, but in the future, I'm going to do this. And you have to practice it. We can't just think about it. We can't just say, well, I'm going to assert myself, because you won't, because you'll go into the same behavior, but you must practice it with a friend, a colleague, mentor, husband, somebody, to start learning how to do it in the moment when the heat is on. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
it's about practice, or we can't change that behavior. It's very difficult, because even though cognitively we all get it, I shouldn't do that, we automatically do it. So we have to come up with something that puts the stop in. Number one, anticipate. Here comes Joe. He's going to push my button, but I'm not going to let him do it. I'm going here.
Oh, that's genius. That is genius. What advice do you, just overall, from all the research that you've done, and let's just focus on women, because of what our tendencies are, what advice would you give to women to get to the next level, to go from that secretary, if you do have incredible leadership skills that just are unrecognized yet, what advice would you give?
Well, for me, it's that self-awareness is key.
Okay.
Really know yourself deeply, because if you do, then you can leverage your strengths, your talents, minimize those risks. But when you really don't know, sometimes you don't know, you're undermining yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, I think for me, the number one is be so self-aware, and then, really tap into those strengths, let them shine, and make sure you're not sabotaging yourself with your own risks and fear.
How are you not a worrier? How are you not a worrier?
Well, I'm a slight worrier, and I'm a little bit So, and I have a little bit of eccentric, so that they kind of play together. So I'll sometimes, like my warrior shows up at like 3 in the morning when I can't sleep and I'm thinking about all these things. Like if
Right.
I wake up, so for me, I do have it. My mother was she was a constant worrier. That's all she did was worry about the neighbors, worried about her.
That
So
sounds like my mom. I go the
yeah,
other direction.
yeah. So, but my father was a fighter, so I think I got some of that. He was like a union man. He was a union negotiator. So then I became a labor negotiator, so I could be on the other side. Okay, but
Wow.
yeah. So but you know what else helped me? Honestly, I have to say, I was in sports as a kid. I was in, believe it or not, even at my age, and I grew up in the Philadelphia area. I played every sport that was out there, from softball to field hockey to basketball to swimming to diving. I think that running, I think those things helped me become, who I am, to be assertive, to be a team player, to be a leader, to be a little too pushy at times, you know. So,
I've heard that before. That is great advice. You get those kids in team sports, even individual sports where there's competition. You
right, right.
have
And
to
I
grow
just
up
think,
fast.
yeah, and other activities too. It's not just sports, but young girls need to be active. They don't need to be passive. Learning to work together and competing. I think competition for girls, because it gives you that level of feeling confident on your feet, and it helps you to compete. Unfortunately, you have to compete with men. How do you do it if you? And we measure competition in two different ways, so we know if you're competitive or not. So unless you're in academia or something, that would be okay to not be competitive in some cases. But in leadership, being competitive is generally part of that turf. So when little girls are raised not to be competitive, that kind of sets them back a little bit, or they have to have other things to help them, be more assertive and
More
stand
assertive.
their ground.
What would be the best way for people to get in touch with you? I bet a lot of people are intrigued with your message and would love, everyone loves a self-assessment to see where we stand.
Yeah, I would go. We have actually a new website because we got a new product where now everybody can take the assessments and have their avatar online coach, their personal coach 24/7.
Whoa.
So they can go to CDR-U.com is our new website. And we still have the CDR Assessment Group website, but what CDRU is, you can actually sign in, take the assessments, and you have your 3 modules, and it's very in-depth and personalized. It's not generic. It's all about you, but you get to pick your avatar coach out of like 7. Right now, Kate is the favorite, but so we have a human avatar and we have graphics and so forth and some video outtakes. But this avatar will take your assessments and will not only help you understand what they are, they'll give you developmental advice, and they'll start connecting the dots of the different measures. It's pretty intriguing. You're welcome to try it.
I'm going to.
And then after that, we have 2 other modules that are more guided. They're not as personalized, but one is developmental action planning, so you can become better in your job and for promotions, help with your performance. And the second that would be great for veterans and college students is career action planning, and it helps them understand what jobs they're good for and not good for based on their results. So
Man,
this is brand new. We just launched it July 15th. So we're just
awesome. I'm doing it. CDR-U.com.
.com, right. So you can come on in and take it and see what you think. Yeah.
Nancy, you might not hear me on the air tomorrow morning because I might be going into a different field based on
Yeah.
what you.
There you go. Coaches are always welcome. No,
I
and
love it.
advocates, definitely.
I love
And
it. Nancy
instructors.
Parsons, I want to thank you for sharing your years of experience in helping people discover their true passion and their true calling in life. It really is incredible.
It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. It's rewarding, believe me.
I can see that in your passion. And again, folks, let's do it together. CDR-U.com and find
Right.
out what we're supposed to be doing on this crazy planet. And
That's right. And you're welcome to link with me on LinkedIn too.
excellent. Well,
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you for spending
Thank
some
you.
time with us. We
I
learned so
appreciate
much.
it. Thanks, Dana. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nancy.